Shut up, compressor. Okay, so I've started work on the HK B-17, and my initial impressions are basically, are you fucking kidding me? There's a lot to like about the exterior detail of this kit, but when I've started looking on the inside at the cockpit details in particular, there's a lot to be desired. So, as an example, here is one of the cockpit sidewalls. Now, these boxes are, about what I would expect in 148. They're decent. But these, I believe they're life rafts, and if they're not life rafts, then tough shit. They are pill-shaped things that need to be painted yellow, and they are molded into this right alongside everything else that needs to be painted a completely different color. So already there's tedious masking involved just to pull these off. Which, why? Why does it have to be that way? They could have just as easily been separate parts that just, you paint separately and just stick them on. This is the instrument panel, and you can see these are supposed to be rudders. I can forgive that because the view through the windscreen and other various greenhouse elements of the cockpit area pretty limited, so you're probably not going to see those anyway. There's obviously ejector pin marks here in the process of being cleaned up. This one I'm ignoring because it's going to be hidden. You won't even see it. But still, this instrument panel leaves things to be desired. It could be a little bit better. You're probably only going to see it as something like this. So try not to get too frustrated about that, but still would have liked to see something a little bit prettier than that. The flip side of this, where you've got, what will be the bombardier section, again, could be better. I hate these sort of half relief things. They scream monogram to me, honestly. Surely there's a better way to depict a fire extinguisher, especially if that has to be red, which I need to do some research and see if they were actually red during the war. Don't want to fall into a Spitfire crowbar situation. The bombs are also kind of gross. The fattest tail fins that I have seen on 148 bombs, and really lacking on the fuse detail. However, they're going to be stuck up in a bomb bay, so I'm trying not to get too worked up. But if worse comes to worse, the hole placement on these is pretty basic and easy to repeat, so I could probably bring in some aftermarket bombs if I decide to. Now, let's move to the actual cockpit deck. This center console is arguably the main feature that you can see through the windscreen. This and the seats. And it came basically with the grooves for the various throttle levers and things like that, but no actual levers. They're just not part of the kit. And this little console down here that has the 3 white dots on it, festooned with switches and gauges and things, and none of them are represented. It was just a rectangle. So I got a bit frustrated by that, and I did some quick scratch building with styrene and a little bit of brass wire right there, just to build up the throttle levers and these various levers up here. Not super happy with it, but from what will be seen through the greenhouse, I think it will be okay, especially once paint gets on it. But yeah, so far everything feels kind of kludgy and dated on this. It's not what I would like. I mean, the seats, which kind of fit in here like so, they're okay. They capture the shape pretty well, but I would buy some resin ones in a heartbeat if they were available. Don't fall off. Another ugly aspect of this is these god-awful control yokes, which, I know that the actual stem of these things in real life is basically super thick. I mean, they look like about the size of pool noodles. They're that thick. So that is kind of okay, but down here where there should be sort of a dust boot around the bottom of it, there's just a plastic rectangle, and the actual control yokes themselves were nowhere near this thick. They also didn't have rectangular bracing points along the backs here. So I really don't want to have to scratch build this. Not the kind of thing I would look forward to. I'm contemplating perhaps trying to design replacements in Fusion 360 and print them on my new Photon that I have yet to even plug in. But I don't know if I want to stall the build for waiting for that to happen. But these things are pretty prominently visible, so I'm going to have to try to do something to address the shoddiness of what's going on here. Alright, so after I got done feeling sorry for myself over the shoddy state of detail on the interior of this B-17, particularly the control yokes, I got to work. And I took the kit part and basically, as you can see here, hacked off the control yoke. The column itself, I'm not sure it's quite the right shape, but the columns on B-17s are quite thick, so I figured close enough. Added some epoxy sculpt down here to represent the dust boot for where it hits the floor. Drilled, I don't know if you'll be able to see it or not. Come on, focus, you piece of shit. Okay, that's not happening. Anyway, drilled a hole through it in order to mount a scratch-built wheel that I assembled with some brass wire and the remains of the actual yoke itself. So this cross piece right here and the center, the center hub of the yoke are the original kit plastic. The actual radius here of the yoke is a piece of relatively thick brass wire, and this little drop piece here is a slightly thinner gauge. And I added a little bit of plastic on the end of it here, as you can see, and then have some more brass wire in it right there. I was kind of hoping to be able to mount this thing at a slightly jaunty angle to give it a little bit of personality, but apparently B-17's had an aileron lock. So, mounting it like that is not really a possibility, but thankfully, because it's just a pin through a hole in the plastic, we can correct it to that, and voila, suddenly we have a much better steering yoke than what the kit provided. So that one is good, that one got primed. The other one, as I was cutting, this piece here gets ridiculously fragile, so I added some Tamiya extra thin to it and decided to leave it to sit overnight. So I figured tonight I can walk you all through what I'm doing to get it scratch built. So right here I've got the loop of wire that's going to make up the yoke, and the slightly thinner wire that's going to make up that sort of vertical piece. First, we need to do something with this, and let me make sure. I need to find my little bit of plastic that has the hole in it. There we go. Okie doke. So first thing is first is I need to come in here and remove these sort of pieces from the edge. To do that, it's not all that complicated, but definitely a little bit fussy. Come in here. Other hassle of this, there's a tiny, tiny little remnant of sprue on there that I need to remove. But these things are incredibly fragile, so I'm probably just going to leave that and call it shit that we have to deal with and accept. So basically, first we need to figure out what we're doing width-wise here. See, we definitely need to trim this a bit, because we want to get this fitting right in between these two pieces. Just a tiny, tiny little bit too thick. I think that'll work. So then we've got a little bit of no fucking around super glue. I'm gonna usually get some on each side of it. I love this gel stuff because it actually stays where you put it. Come in here. Just like so. Sit for a minute and then we'll go ahead and add that bottom piece. Okay, so I've got this little bit of brass cut. Now it's a matter of gluing it into the hub. So we're gonna take some little dollops of CA, put one down here, one right there. And it's a matter of just getting this shit in place. Maybe. Ta-da! Not 100% perfect, but you're seeing this thing from above through a very, very tough to see through windscreen, so close enough. Okay, so I'm hitting the point where I need to do some interior painting. I've done a bit of priming, and it's time to start getting some colors down, and there are a lot of colors at play in the inside of a B-17, so I'm going to start with dark dull green, which for that I prefer MRP gunship green. It's a FS match, and I think it's a little bit more on point, as seen in the P-47 video, than their own dark dull green, which seems a little bit light. So, these new bottles are kind of garbage for the flip top, so I don't use it. Instead, just unscrew as usual, disposable pipette, plop that into the airbrush. I'm sure we'll have to go back to that well a couple times, but let's get started. Now, a fun discovery I made as I was getting ready to start filling these ejector pin marks is that they're invisible. Basically, once you have the cockpit walls in place, they kind of fit in here like this, and voila, you don't see anything. And of course, the center console completely covers this, so we don't have to worry about it. Now, in terms of chipping on like the rotor pedals and things like that, I'm going to go with kind of the way I'm preferring to do it nowadays, where I paint the color first. Then if I decide I wanted to add some chipped down to metal type stuff, or chipped down to wood, I need to figure that out. I can come in and paint that later in targeted areas, then do the hairspray chipping, all that good business. But for now, actually going to come back to this in a second once this dries a little bit, because I want to pop out the instrument panel and get the combing up here. But that can wait just a minute. Yeah. It's the piece I don't want to be throwing around too much. Okay. Time for these awesome sidewalls. Now I decided I'm going to go ahead and paint these first, and then mask, and then paint the yellow for the pills back here.